Good morning, Baltimore. It is Monday, June 22nd, and thank you for tuning in to the latest episode of the Early Birds podcast. I'm your host, Matt Weyrich, alongside columnist Josh Tolentino. Josh, recording here on Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to your family. Do anything fun today?
Yeah, Matt, I actually spent a large portion of the day with extended family. So my father, he's with my mom back home in Illinois. So unfortunately, didn't get time with him. But I tell you what, I got as best as you could without, being there right there with dad. Just spent a lot of time again with extended family, a lot of uncles, lots of cousins who are fathers, and actually played in a championship basketball game today. We won, and it was certainly a tough game. And my cousin, who's a father of three, he made some clutch plays. Him and I are our biggest, tallest guys on our team, and I'm a little shorter than you, Matt. The first time I met you, I actually pointed out your height. That was one of my first observations. But just to give our viewers some perspective, I'm about 6 foot on the dot, and our opponent today, their tallest player was 6'7", and so that was certainly
Wow.
a challenge, and someone who we've actually played in past years and they've gotten their fair share of the stick in terms of getting their wins over us. So today was some sweet revenge on Father's Day. So a good championship Sunday for all of us.
Congrats. That is awesome. Hey, anytime you're going out with a dub, that is a great way to spend a holiday. Used to do on Thanksgiving, the pigskin family football games in the yard and everything like that. And that was some big highlight reel catches made by yours truly back in the day. So I know how it feels to pull out those dubs. So that's awesome. Similar boat for me. I wasn't with my dad in Northern Virginia. I'm actually down in Southern Virginia visiting my father-in-law down here with the wife and some of her extended family. So that was great. Did some crabbing today. Went out and, I say did some crabbing. My father-in-law did some crabbing while I sat in the boat and had a couple of beers, but sat there and then he showed me the whole process of catching crabs and identifying which ones are going to become soft shell crabs and all that kind of stuff, which was really cool. So good to get out on the boat, catch some sun. And the Orioles are out there catching some sun as well on the West Coast in L.A. This week, where they just took 2 of 3 from the Los Angeles Dodgers after losing 2 of 3 to the Seattle Mariners, where I was out there last week. So we're going to go ahead and dive into all of that today. Our last couple of episodes with the Orioles, we kind of zoomed out, did some big picture stuff, talked about guys that maybe they could target at the deadline, and then some players that might be available if they decide to become sellers. So if you haven't checked out either of those episodes with Sam Cohn, make sure to go back into those archives there on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you guys get your podcasts, and check those out. So today, we're going to kind of dive back in and look where the Orioles are right now. And it has been a bumpy road, to say the least. Really, we're kind of struggling coming into this road trip here, a 9-game, 3-series road trip on the West Coast. They had just lost 2 of 3 to the San Diego Padres. And then they go out and the Mariners kind of take care of business against them. Offense starts to disappear. And it looks like after the first game against the Dodgers that the Orioles are really starting to slip and their season's starting to get away from them. They blow a 9th-inning lead after a nice comeback win, or a comeback, I should say, to put themselves in position to win on Friday. All hope maybe is lost. And then the Orioles come back and not just win 2 in a row, but emphatically win on Sunday, 12-1, beating the Los Angeles Dodgers, knocking around Emmett Sheehan and the Dodgers bullpen. Bunch of guys leave the yard for home runs. Brandon Young, another nice outing. So are the Orioles back? That is still an ever open-ended question, but certainly this is an Orioles team that just as much as they are prone to going on losing skids, they are also prone to showing us what they're capable of when they put it all together with a game like on Sunday.
Matt, we've seen this movie before, and they certainly have a prime opportunity coming up here against the AL worst Angels. I certainly emphatically believe that they have to win 4 in a row for the first time this season, going against a lowly opponent in the Angels, just riding this momentum off the Dodgers. And again, it's just been a roller coaster of emotions watching this team. especially over these past few nights. I know Sunday was a day game, but just given all these late first pitches as you experienced firsthand there in Seattle for Birdland Orioles fans who have been paying close attention in recent days. I'd love to, check the heart pulse and rate, because it's been all over the place, and certainly ending the series with an emphatic victory, finale, 12-1 by the score on Sunday. I just they show you these flashes, Matt, and you just can't get all aboard on that train. So I think even Craig Albernaz mentioned it himself today. Consistency, that is the big piece missing from this team, because thus far the only thing that they've been pretty consistent at is being inconsistent. So some highs, a lot of lows, and let's see if they can really, again, ride this momentum towards their first winning season. I'm sorry, winning month, that is.
Yes.
Winning season would be great.
A winning season would certainly be a step in the right direction of the way that things have gone over the last year and a half here. But with this Orioles team, 5 games under 500, doesn't matter, because they are 2 games out of a wild card spot right now. And it's worth mentioning that there are several teams in between them in a wild card spot right now. 4, in fact, all sandwiched within 2 games. And actually, you can loop the Houston Astros in there as well, who have the same record as the Orioles. So that is 5 teams within 2 games of each other. Wait, 3, 6? No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can count. 6 teams within 2 games in the AL wildcard race, and that doesn't even mention the White Sox, who have the second wildcard spot, a game and a half up on the Blue Jays as well. So a very tightly packed race, really anyone's game. And not sure who tweeted this, but saw this earlier, that only 3 teams in the American League have a positive run differential. In the entire AL, 12 out of the 15 teams are sitting there under 0, with negative 25 for the Orioles. So as much as that doesn't necessarily bode well for their ability to climb the ladder, there's teams ahead of them, like the Athletics, who are minus 54 on the season. The Blue Jays are minus 25. The Twins are at minus 18. So none of these teams above them, save for the Rays, who have the top wildcard spot, really jump off the page as a team that deserves to be where they are right now, because really the American League is a crapshoot right now. And it's crazy. Just we're pretty much to the halfway point of the season now, just a few games away, and we are looking at an American League that is still as wide open as this. Even with a third wildcard spot, it does make you wonder if the third wildcard team, which has had to be a 500 team or better in the American League since its their expansion to a third wildcard, you wonder if this is the year that maybe a team under 500 can reach the playoffs. So certainly possible under this format. Josh, when you just look at this American League, do you see the Orioles as a team that has maybe a leg up, maybe a better chance of kind of climbing this ladder and being the team that emerges from the pack?
I do, and that certainly happens when they're hitting on all cylinders. We've seen their rotation take numerous steps in the right direction. Brandon Young, shout out to BY, as everyone loves to call him inside that clubhouse. Who would have imagined? I probably had him 7th, 6th on that starting rotation depth chart to begin the season. The Orioles are 10-2 on games when Brandon Young starts. So, but I mean, the offense, they have to follow suit. And, we saw the explosiveness today, primarily, or specifically rather, from Colton Cowser, Blaze Alexander, who's been on an absolute tear since the beginning of the May. It's time for those homegrown guys to really take the take those right steps with guys like Blaze. Gunnar Henderson, Jackson Holliday. It seems like he's dealing with a short-term injury by all the looks and sounds of what came out of Craig Albernaz today. Kobe Mayo, another struggling hitter for them. They really need to just up those batting averages, and especially come through in bigger moments for this team, because we've seen an assortment of pieces get it done. Very rarely have we seen all of the pieces come together. So those ones that are straggling behind, and this is not even focusing on the Tyler O'Neills of the group, but the ones who have been here through the struggle years, through the great years, and now trying to compete under contention with first year manager Craig Albernaz. I think Albie is guiding them in the right direction. I think the standards that he's putting in place, I've been a big fan about that. I've written that in multiple columns. Now it's just the consistency part and having really every piece come together. And June's a heck of a time. There's 9 games left in this month. They're 9 and 10, I believe, still without their first winning month, as I mentioned earlier. So. If they can get around here right before the trade deadline, perhaps that makes the front office be a little bit more aggressive in that nature heading up to that date.
Yeah, still a lot of time certainly to get there, but as we get closer and closer to the deadline and this front office has to start preparing one way or the other, not that you can't, be agile as a front office and prepare for both scenarios, but certainly trade talks happen. If you're going to be a buyer, you want to get in early with some of these teams, particularly if you're going to be as aggressive as this Orioles front office might have to be to push this team over the edge. Josh, you mentioned Jackson Holliday in there. I just wanted to run through a couple of quick roster moves / injury updates from this road trip so far. First with Anthony Nunez was optioned to AAA Norfolk, the struggling rookie reliever, to make room for Ryan Helsley, who came back off the injured list, missed 7 weeks with elbow inflammation. So it was certainly a boost for this Orioles bullpen to get Ryan Helsley back after kind of struggling without him, especially over the last few weeks. And then, of course, Helsley is on the losing end of that blown loss to the Dodgers on Friday. Also gave up 2 home runs against the Mariners in his first start back there. Although it was a really weird outing, he gave up 2 first pitch home runs on fastballs and then settled in, and I believe like 7 of the next 8 pitches were strikes, and he retired the next 3 guys in order. So he looked sharp, but also gave up 2 solo home runs on his first 2 pitches. So it was a weird first outing, and maybe that boded poorly for his outing on Friday, in which he was on the losing end, as I mentioned, of that game. So they do have Helsley back, but we will see just how confident Craig Albernaz is in him moving forward. We saw Adley Rutschman get hit in the ear on an errant throw by Mariners shortstop Colt Emerson. A bit of a scary play there right at the end of a game in Seattle. He leaves in the 9th inning for a pinch hitter, or a pinch runner, I should say, and ultimately ends up going on the concussion IL. The Orioles don't end up bringing back a third catcher, even though they have Chadwick Tromp on the taxi squad. They go with Michael Ciani, the outfielder from the Dodgers, ironically enough, who they acquired there to kind of extend out their bench while Rutschman is sidelined. So 7-day IL situation for Rutschman. And then Jackson Holliday, as you mentioned, suffering a groin injury in Los Angeles. He did not start on Sunday, but both he and Craig Albernaz seemed to be optimistic that it wasn't going to be a long-term thing. So, Josh, as you look at the all 3 of those moves there, what kind of stands out to you? I mean, for me, Samuel Basallo starting 4 straight games at catcher, very rare situation, particularly on Sunday, which was a day game after a night game.
Hey, it looks like Sammy asked Craig for that start. I kind of love the fire from the young 21-year-old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, after everything that happened with him a couple of weeks ago, maybe he has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder to prove that he can be counted on, not just to stay healthy all year, but also to provide and step up when a guy like Adley Rutschman goes down.
Yeah, certainly love that passion from Sammy as he as you mentioned, Adley goes down. Sammy's got to step up to the plate, literally, figuratively. But man, you asked about the roster moves. I actually was thinking this when I saw the Adley move and Ciani coming up. Weston Wilson, Tommy Pham, you probably wish that you were still with the organization because these injuries you cannot predict them. But it certainly seems like they're favoring a right-handed hitter there in Ciani as they're lengthening the depth there on the bench with Adley on that concussion IL. What a freak accident, man. Just running towards first base. Have you ever gotten hit by a pitch like in the head area or experienced that?
I've never been hit by a ball, but I have been hit by a backswing before and got clocked pretty good. So it doesn't feel great. I can attest that.
Yeah, I'm assuming that you had headgear on.
I did. I had just a hat, so it wasn't really.
Okay.
Yeah, my ear got all fat.
Yeah, so we were mentioning family parties earlier at the top with Father's Day. I can recall pretty vividly because I was the one who threw the ball, but I was just playing catch with my cousin in the backyard, and man, this was definitely my fault because in between us playing catch, he was talking, I believe, to his mom or another cousin, and so wasn't ready to field the catch, and man, I hit him like right square on the head, and
Mm.
I'm gonna say like that interrupted our bond as growing cousins. The next few family parties we were not talking, but you just imagining or kind of reimagining him crying and just I believe he was bleeding, and just seeing Adley go through that, man. Just obviously he had a helmet on, and this is the big leagues, but just a scary situation. You hope that he's able to come back as quickly as possible, especially given how important of a piece he's been to this ball club. So, and then just breaking down the rest of the roster moves, you look at Anthony Nunez. I do believe, Matt, if this team goes on a significant run later in the year, we're talking about September, still playing meaningful baseball, fighting for a playoff spot. Anthony Nunez, he was right there at the beginning. You know what? He's a 24-year-old rookie. You're going to go through these ups and downs. And, there were conversations amongst us scribes before this occurred. And so we even discussed them amongst ourselves. Maybe it might be a best move for him to go down there, reset. You can't necessarily find situations or, when you're a reliever, you're thrusted unless you're Helsley, you're thrusted, as this bullpen knows, thrusted into any situation. Rico Garcia, I'd argue that he belongs in a certain setup role, but we've seen him pitch it in so many different innings. So getting back to the point, Anthony Nunez, unfortunately, there's not a spot where you can just kind of work your way back as you're working through things. Not necessarily can always have a 5-run lead coming into the ball game. So I think that was the right move, getting him down there to AAA Norfolk, and you hope that a fresh reset will work in his favor. Especially again, he was such an important unheralded piece at the beginning of the year, unexpected piece that he can contribute later in the season.
Yeah, and look, you look at his repertoire, and you can see exactly why he is capable of being such a valued back end reliever, and why he was so successful right off the bat. And maybe his pitch selection still needs a little bit of work, and the league adjusted to him a little bit, and he has to figure out how to adjust back. And talking with Craig Albernaz, it sounds like there was a plan put together with the pitching coaches of what Nunez needed to do when he got sent back down. So we'll see what that looks like, if there's any kind of usage changes when he does get back to the major leagues. He took a few days to report to AAA Norfolk, so we didn't see him down there until this weekend. But Nunez, like you said, is someone who I fully expect to be a big part of this bullpen down the stretch. Wouldn't expect him to spend too much time down in the minor leagues. I mean, Albert Suarez hasn't even pitched on this West Coast swing here. So there's certainly room for them to bring him back up whenever they decide to, whenever he's hit the minimum threshold of days spent down in the minors. If they decide to move on from Albert Suarez again, there's an opening there. But the Orioles also have some arms that are working their way back. Dean Kramer and Cade Povich beginning their rehab assignments. Kramer and Povich, both guys who are going to be most likely building up as starting pitchers. Maybe they don't do that with Povich just because you have Chris Bassett, who might not be too far behind, and they decide to put him in the bullpen. But I imagine he's going to be built up as a starter here for a couple of outings, and then they'll kind of evaluate from there. You have Kramer, who would likely take Trey Gibson's spot in the rotation. Do they go to a 6-man? We're still a little bit far out from being able to speculate too much on that, because pitcher injuries are so fickle, and they can obviously crop up at any time. So trying to debate what their rotation might look like when these guys are ready, it's probably a bit of a fruitless endeavor, but both of them are going to be factoring in to that mix sometime soon. And Dylan Beavers beginning his rehabilitation assignment as well. So that outfield, which has Siani at the moment, could soon be padded with Dylan Beavers there, who will obviously start to crack more of the regular everyday starting lineup. However, the way that Colton Cowser is hitting right now, I have to imagine that he is going to be the favorite to still get the lion's share of starts in center to right field. And then Leody Taveras is the one who maybe might start to see some of his playing time go down. He hasn't exactly been hitting as well as he did at the start of the year. Has made, excuse me, has made a few. Thank you. A few errors in the outfield lately. A couple of nice plays mixed in as well, but has been flip-flopped with Colton Cowser. Leody Taveras was playing center field almost every day, and now he has been more of the everyday right fielder, with Cowser playing center, which I think is the right move for Craig Albernaz to have Colton Cowser, who I think has better range and a better arm, and somebody whose long-term future is probably at center field. He just needs to get the reps, I think, to really settle in at that position Maybe I'd like him better in left, to be honest, especially at home, just because of the way that those dimensions are. But I think as a everyday center fielder, he is the one who probably checks off the most boxes for that. So I like that fit there. But with the way this lineup is going, they certainly could use a boost that Beavers could provide. Wasn't having the greatest of seasons, about 100 OPS plus before he went down, but somebody who obviously they're very high on moving forward.
Yeah, certainly welcome back. A hitter who I think the league had started to figure out his approach earlier in the season after his man. Like when he came up in August, September, I just remember him taking so many walks and seeing so many balls as a rookie after making his debut. So obviously you gotta figure out how that injury and his rehab comes into effect and play here, but. It appears that he's on the mend, but for now you got to roll with the guys that are here. And man, I'm not saying that they necessarily need a sweep going into this Angels series, but I mean, they
Do
kind of
they?
they kind of do, especially given where the Angels are at in the standings. I think that's been such a hot topic point throughout the season is just the state of the AL. Well, here you are, against the lowest team, the bottom dwellers of the league. You got to go in there and get that sweep. There you go, Matt. I went ahead and said it, man, because a 1-2 series would just undo all of the momentum that they have. Beating the back-to-back World Series champs.
Yeah, I mean to come out of this this 9 game uh, West Coast swing here to be 8 and or I guess it would be 5-4 or 4-5 just doesn't really have the same feel as 6-3. And certainly with what it can do for the standings as well. The Angels, like you said, last place in the American League, only a minus 36 run differential, so they're not like crazily the worst team like in the National League, where you have the Rockies at minus 90 at the bottom of those standings. The Angels certainly have been competitive enough where it's not necessarily a given that the Orioles are going to go in there and sweep. But if the Orioles are who they want to be, and the Angels are who we think they are, the Orioles should be going into this series and expecting a sweep. And it's interesting. Last season, their last gasp in May was against the Angels, where they went in and they swept them after really struggling. They were on another West Coast trip. They had been struggling. They go in and they sweep them. Kyle Gibson on the flight back from Anaheim gives this rousing speech to everybody on the plane and saying like, this is where we like pick ourselves up and we move forward. And obviously that did not happen, and Brandon Hyde was fired not too long after that. But with this, where the Orioles are right now, being at the halfway point, and Pete Alonso talked a little bit about this on Sunday, like now's the time. Now's the time to kind of figure out who you are and get going, because at the end of the day, yes, does the American League look like it is right now? One or two of these teams are going to go on a run. And while one of these wild card spots might be, up for grabs, and a team hovering around 500 that has one hot week might be the one that gets in, do you really want to leave it up to chance for that at the end of the year? No, probably not.
Yeah, and Matt, I'm gonna make a comparison here because it involves the Orioles. But after that notorious Yoshi Yamamoto no hitter that was going on at Oriole Park and Jackson Holiday, the heroics there, I believe that was last September, correct? At Camden Yards.
Believe it was September, yes.
Okay, so last September, that Dodgers collapse, and the Dodgers up to that point, I believe they were on a little bit of a rut. That night, actually, I was at the Dodgers team hotel, Matt, meeting with a few sources, some folks that I had covered before. I saw Dave Roberts walk in there, man, and man, about as distraught as you could imagine after that, and just wanting no conversation with anyone who was around him, and just I can I'm just seeing it in my head, him walking through that Four Seasons lobby, which by that hotel itself, there are so many emotions that happen there. You think of the Red Sox earlier in the year, parting ways with Corey. You think that's where Max Crosby stayed when he came in Baltimore. That lobby has seen a lot of different emotions, but just getting back on track here with the Dodgers, and how this relates to the Orioles. Well, we all know how that chapter ends for the Dodgers. They go on to storm through the playoffs, win an exciting World Series against the Toronto Blue Jays. They're back-to-back champs. Well, and a lot of the reporting that has been done out of Los Angeles, the Dodgers, they credit that loss and that series specifically against the Orioles as their turning point. So is this the turning point for the Orioles here? With the Dodgers series, and are they about to go on a run? I'm not ready to jump on the train like what I mentioned earlier, but you never truly know when that turning point is during the season. I've talked to players in the clubhouse, and they've pointed to comeback wins or dramatic wins as they thought that was the point. Well, it ended up not being that specific point in the season that they could point to. So who knows? And I think this is just got to ride this momentum, and that's why I'm gonna go out there and say let's get this sweep. Who cares about 4 in a row? Go for 5.
Yeah, I mean, there have been so many points this year where you think maybe is this the turning point for the Orioles? Is this where things spark and they go on a run here? And they have had some moments where it's really looked like that. They've won 3 in a row in emphatic fashion. They went back, earlier in the season. They go out and they get swept by the Pirates, but then they turn around and they sweep the White Sox right after that on the road. It was like, okay, this Orioles team, like maybe they are able to pick things up and move on from here. And there's just been time and time again they've done that, and then they've slipped right back into being the team that has been so increasingly frustrating so far this year, and really dating back to the second half of 2024. So it's a interesting group, and one that didn't have Blaze Alexander in 2024 or 2025 and is now on a run. Didn't have Brandon Young, certainly not pitching like this last year and the year before. So this is it's definitely a different team, but one that has been trying to shake off some of these inconsistencies, and I think we certainly can see what the vision looks like here. And with the state of the AL, you can look at this team and say, okay, we can think like buyers. We can look at where we are in the standings and be encouraged, not let things kind of spiral. Because I think going into play on Sunday, I believe Jacob tweeted this. They were only like 2 games better than they were at this point last season. So with where they were in the standings at this point last year versus where they are right now is a completely different story. So they've lucked out certainly in that regard, but at the same time, one of these teams is going to have to take advantage of these opportunities. And you look at the teams ahead of them in the standings. The Blue Jays certainly came into the season expecting to be a team that was competing for a World Series after coming just short last year. The Athletics, while they came in certainly with high hopes, did not have a great pitching staff on paper, and it still has been maybe the biggest bane. I believe they've allowed the most runs in the American League. Yes, they have. The Minnesota Twins were coming into the year expecting to be basement dwellers, tanking kind of situation. They're in the thick of it. The Rangers, have middled around 500 for the last few years, and the Astros seem to be on the downward trend from where they were a couple of years ago. So not a lot of groups, a lot of teams in this group that are certainly inspiring a ton of confidence of even, if they were to get up to the trade deadline, are they going to be buyers? I mean, it might come down to the Orioles being one of the more aggressive teams among that group. If the Orioles are willing to look at themselves and say, yeah, we're 3 or 4 or 5 games under 500, but we're right here and we believe we're better than a lot of these other teams, maybe they're a team that can, make up some of that ground in the second half because they go out and they get a Joe Ryan or whoever it might be. If it's addition by subtraction from another team in the playoff race like the Twins, or they go and get a Jose Soriano from the Angels or whatever it might be, a pitcher, whoever. I think that the Orioles could make up ground that way, but certainly you'd like to be able to start building up more momentum and getting some of that confidence in the group that you already have. Because if you are going to buy at the deadline, it can't just be about, the front office trying to save jobs or anything like that. It's got to be because you believe this team can go somewhere come October. And if you don't have the players in place that are winning baseball games now, how confident are you really going to be that that team plus a Kenley Jansen or Aroldis Chapman is really going to be going places once the games really get serious in the postseason?
Yeah, Matt, you said it, all of it right there. And I truly think it comes down to, I mentioned this earlier, but that quad of hitters with Gunnar Henderson, Kobe Mayo, Jackson Holliday, and Colton Cowser, who's been on a hot stretch as of late. Those 4 guys, those are your homegrown guys. They have to really show improvements and strides at the plate. And Man, you mentioned one guy there, Blaze Alexander, and I know this wasn't on the script or anything, but I mean, obviously he's certainly comfortable hitting in the lineup at the spots where he's been. You know, traditionally it looks like between 8 and 9 throughout the entire season. But man, you think it's going through Albie's head? You want to put him a
I
little bit
asked
higher
him,
there?
I asked him exactly that, and he laughed and said, "Man, you guys really like lineup questions." And I was like, I just kind of raised my hands because, like, I mean, he's hitting as well as he is. Like, are we going to have him in the 8 or 9 spot? And I get that, like, in the modern day baseball thinking, the order of the lineup doesn't matter a whole lot. It's more about like who's in front of you, who's behind you, and the who's batting eighth or ninth versus who's batting first or second really only matters in that they by the end of the year will probably have X number of more plate appearances. But at the same time, maybe I want Blaze Alexander next to Samuel Basayo because they would complement each other pretty well in this lineup, as opposed to a Jackson Holiday or a Colton Cowser, whoever it is at the bottom of the order. So, I mean, it didn't sound like it was something that was at top of mind for him, but certainly the issue has been raised.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta think that that has to be a daily question that they're thinking about, especially as Blaze continues to perform. And I know it's been since May 1st is kind of like the widely circulated mentioned date as it pertains to his offensive statistics. But man, that's a pretty long stretch here. As we're hitting about to hit July. So. Um, that's just one question that I'm glad that you were able to ask Albie that because certainly one that is on our minds.
Yeah, 100%. And he's been really the MVP of the last month for the Orioles. Just real quick as we wrap here, just want to mention the starters for this week coming up. The Orioles, I believe, have only named, or no, they've named all three. It'll be Kyle Bradish starting game one against the Angels. Game two will be Shane Baz, and game three, Trey Gibson. So certainly looks like Gibson will be getting at least one more start in the rotation, whether it's going to be a Dean Kramer or Cade Povich in his spot the next time around. We will see. The Orioles do get a day off coming up here on Thursday as they come back, and then again Thursday next week as well. So their ability to manipulate the rotation and things like that with those off days will certainly come in handy as they try to fit those guys back in. Josh, any final words for the good people?
Unfortunately, no Grayson Rodriguez this series, huh?
I know it looked like they were going to
Yeah,
be lined up for him to pitch Sunday, but then yet another injury pops up. So
but
alas. No
heck,
Trey
maybe.
Mancini either, which is actually the more disappointing thing in my opinion. Would have been a great story for him to get to face his former team, but got DFA'd by the Angels after an abbreviated MLB comeback, which was still awesome to see for a guy like that.
Yeah, no, and then also be a couple of reunions for some Orioles, namely Taylor Ward, Hank
Mm-hmm.
Conger, spent a lot of time over there. So, you asked me any good words for the good people. Let's see if Jacob makes it this far in the episode. Do you think Jacob would go to Disney by himself? Disneyland?
I think he 100% will, and also I know he
He
100%
will.
is.
Oh,
He
yeah.
will go to Disney by himself, and he also is 100% going to get through this podcast to this point because he texted me about something at like the 55th minute part the other day. So I know he is a dedicated listener. But
Okay.
I
I asked
100%
that without knowing that. So,
I 100% think that he would go to Disney by himself, but he is a sucker for Marriott points. So if he is actually able to transfer the Marriott points and use that for Disney World, I know he's going to be doing that every chance he gets.
I haven't talked to him about where he's staying out there, while he's on this West Coast swing, but there's a Town Place Suites that is walking distance from the park entrance that I've stayed at a couple
Yes,
times. I've actually
I've stayed there twice. Yep,
okay, there we go. I've
I
got
know
some
exactly the
PTO.
one.
I've got some PTO coming up here soon, and I actually think I'm going to make a trip out to Disneyland. So,
So you've been to
Jacob,
Disneyland before?
I have, yep. So,
Yeah, I've been to
shout,
Disneyland, not Disney World.
oh, I've been to both. Yeah, Disneyland, Disney World, and I've also been to Tokyo Disneyland.
Oh, I didn't even know there's
Yeah,
one in Tokyo. Shows you what I know.
yeah. No, there's man, you're putting me on the spot, but or I'm putting myself on the spot. But next episode, I'll have all the world locations. They have one in
Okay.
Paris. They have one in Hong Kong. Um, I know I'm missing a few more. So, but man, Jacob, I'm proud of you, man. I would join you right there with you, solo dolo. And I hope he's taking advantage of that too, hopping in the solo line to jump most of the line on all of those rides.
You better be, Jacob. We're counting on you. All right, y'all. Thank you guys so much for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Give the show 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you guys get your podcasts. And give us a follow on socials, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Sun Early Birds. He's Josh Tolentino. I'm Matt Weyrich. Thank y'all so much for listening, and have a good one.